Pikmin has enemies, and like every other game with enemies, you are expected to kill them. But what if we try to play through a Pikmin game without killing a single enemy, in this case Pikmin 2. I'm going to try to get all the way to the credits without ever brutally killing a single creature, and that's the only rule for this run. Don't kill anything. If I accidentally kill an enemy, I have to reset then and there. Now I didn't just choose Pikmin 2 on a whim, it's the only game where something like this would be possible. Pikmin 1 requires us to kill several enemies, get necessary ship parts, and 3 and 4 have roadblocks about 2 minutes into the game. Pikmin 2 is the only game where we don't get roadblocked in the first 5 minutes, and we also don't need to kill any bosses or enemies to progress through the story. For this challenge, beating the game is getting to the credits after repaying the dead, because that's all that is hypothetically possible. Now I can already see you nerds clacking at your filthy keyboards in the comments about this dwarf bulborb in the tutorial. This might seem like an immediate roadblock, but if you're familiar with Pikmin 2 speedruns, you might know what I'm gonna do here. I said we couldn't kill any enemies, but the Pikmin deserve it, so there's no problem killing them. And if we precisely line ourselves up with this wall and throw a Pikmin, they will be clipped through the wall and we can guide them off the collision of the map. This triggers a Pikmin extinction and drags us into the next day, where we can grind up Pikmin with pellet posies. Now this might seem like a once-off trick to avoid a single weak enemy, but it actually has massive consequences that we'll be dealing with for the entire run. In a normal playthrough, you would kill this guy and then the game triggers a cutscene telling you to switch to Louie. You cannot switch to Louie before this cutscene, and because we never activated it, we cannot use one of the biggest new additions to this game and the series.
No! Unacceptable!
This will definitely sting for a challenge, because having 2 captains allows us to multitask and bait enemies, which we cannot do. We also can't have anyone whistle dismiss Pikmin to keep them safe either, and we'll have to multitask the Pikmin one way the entire game. Louie's only purpose here is to speed up plucking slightly, and that's it. Day 2 consists of getting more Pikmin, and because we skipped the tutorial we do not have enough to break down the bag, so we have to quit and go to day 3. The dwarf bulborb at our base has now also disappeared, so we no longer have to worry about him. Day 3 is a slight bit more action as we have to actually deal with enemies this time. This introduces us to our 2 biggest tactics, distracting enemies and sacrificing Pikmin. This bulborb could get in the way of our treasure, so we just have him be distracted by Olimar and Louie, and then we can despawn him by getting him off the camera. These weaker enemies can only eat 1 Pikmin at a time, so it's usually ideal to just feed them. We are trying to be nice to the creatures of this planet after all. Collecting your first treasure automatically ends the day regardless of if it's the tutorial or not, so we are now on to day 4. 2 days more than a usual playthrough. This will have some consequences as well. We can just ignore all of the overworld enemies today as they aren't in the way of anything, and we can finally collect the Duracell branded battery that was supposed to be obtained 3 days ago. It's buried on the tutorial, but if you skip the tutorial it just unburrows itself. Anyways, we have to tackle, or should I say make non-violent contact with our first cave, the Emergence Cave. This cave is basically just a warm-up for the later ones, and we get to practice our distraction techniques with little to no consequences for failure, unlike what we will be seeing in the future. This is also the cave where we unlock purple Pikmin. These are usually the best type by a mile, but for this challenge they literally can't even run a mile. One of their drawbacks is that they are very slow, and when you can utilize their great combat abilities, they are a pretty big weight on your team. I'd go as far to say as they are the worst type for this challenge, and I stopped using them shortly into the playthrough. Their main advantages here are their carrying weight, as they can ensure that even if weak Pikmin die, the treasure will always get moved, and you can sometimes fish for stunts, but it is risky and can get either them or the enemy killed. I just got annoyed of dragging them around because they're just easy pickings for every enemy in this challenge. Anyways, we get the spherical atlas and can move on to the next area. The first bit of the awakening wood isn't that bad as we can ignore most of the enemies. A big consequence of not being able to kill enemies is that we can't cultivate Pikmin from their corpses. We are locked to only using pellet posies and the extremely rare queen candy pop buds. Because of this, and also the fact that one of our most common strategies is to let Pikmin get devoured while we sit back and earn our pokos, Pikmin tend to be in pretty short supply, and there were instances where I had to spend a few minutes in an in-game day to go grind up more of them. Another thing is, because the extra days we spent by skipping the first dwarf bulborb, there are now ravenous whisker pillars on the ultra spicy spray berries. If we try to get the berries while they are on the plant, there is a high chance that we will kill them. It's not impossible to get the berries, but it is much slower. I then got the strawberry by using the same tactics we used in the Valley of Repose, and then on to the second cave. The Hole of Beasts. Funnily enough, it had barely any beasts. We had to deal with shear grubs on the first floor. These will be some of the most annoying enemies throughout our run. It's hard to distract them, so sacrifice strategies have to be used, and these guys are basically just a Pikmin tax every time they appear, which is frequent. Then the next 2 sublevels contain no beasts. I have to swarm eggs instead of crushing them open with purple Pikmin because I don't want to accidentally kill any Matites that can possibly spawn. This challenge also makes Matites really annoying because they just scatter our Pikmin around and we cannot kill them to reap any rewards from them. Hazards aren't enemies, but we usually try to avoid deactivating them just to add a slight pinch of challenge. If they get accidentally turned off though, it's nothing to worry about. We finally see another beast in sublevel 4, and he's such a beast that we can completely ignore him while he takes a nap. It should go without saying that we cannot collect any treasure that are inside of enemies, so we do not get to play this guy's game and watch, and instead have to substitute for the British Broadcasting Channel card. Bosses are usually extremely difficult and exciting, but here we just completely ignore them. This also means no upgrades. The Empress Bullblacks usually has the treasure gauge, which would let us detect and find the location of treasure. This would have been a great upgrade to have for this challenge, but unfortunately we cannot have it, along with every single other upgrade in the game, except for the area unlocks. After we complete that cave, we have to go straight into the White Flower Garden, which is even easier than the last cave. Only the first 2 sublevels have enemies aside from the boss floor. The sheer grubs are the exact same story as last time, and it's usually faster in a normal run to ignore enemies in sublevel 2. We do get to unlock the white Pikmin, which unlike the purple Pikmin are fast. They can also dig up buried treasure. I'm not allowing them to kill any enemies if they get swallowed, even if accidental. It's a reset if someone dies from it. We cannot unlock the knapsack from the burrowing snaggart either, so no shortcuts or early blue Pikmin. I was a bit slow during day 5, so we do not have enough time to get the geographic projection, so it's on to day 6. We do need purples to carry the geographic projection, but I don't feel safe bringing them with me, so they just stay behind until the bridge is built. I use an interesting tactic against this creeping chrysanthemum. We have to wake him up, so I go far away, zoom out the camera, and wait for him to go back to sleep, which lets us safely continue what we are doing. Anyways, we safely collect the geographic projection, which allows us to access the perplexing pool. I still have some time, so I decide to grab some treasures on the overworld. The healing flask usually requires yellows to get, but you can precisely throw a purple Pikmin to get it earlier, and then you just have to distract the cloaking Burrownit, which is basically just a weaker and slower dwarf bulborb. That's all we can do here for now, so on to the perplexing pool. For some reason I thought it would be excellent Andori to immediately get the first cave of the area out of the way. You will see why this was a bad decision shortly. We have another sheer grub floor to start with, which meant more sacrificing red Pikmin. They almost killed a sheerwig near the ship, but he thankfully flew off before anything bad happened, so I didn't have to reset. Sublevel 2, the floors are now containing a lot more enemies and are mixing hazards with them as well. We also get a new enemy introduced, the Dweevils. Their entire gimmick is that they steal treasures and objects. They typically aren't a concern on account of their dog shit health, which usually gets them killed by 2 purple Pikmin, but health doesn't matter here at all. For this challenge, treasure is the only thing they can grab, as there will be no objects spawned in aside from treasure. We can't use the knapsack to make them grab a captain because we do not have it, and I don't think I have to explain why we aren't allowed to distract them with enemy corpses. I may have been a bit too harsh on purples, as they would have come in handy for the Dweevils, as they have a 100% stun rate, but I never utilized it. There are also Wallyhops who aren't that bad for this challenge, as they are easy to distract. Sublevel 3 is the reason I should have waited until I got yellows to go into this cave. The only enemies here are anode beetles and swooping snitchbugs, who are both extremely annoying. The anode beetle produces a ray of electricity which will commonly block our carrying route, and the swooping snitchbug will frequently grab our Pikmin. You can stun both these enemies without killing them, but it's for a pretty short amount of time, leading to a pretty stally sublevel. It also didn't help that without the treasure gauge, the buried treasure here was pretty hard to find. If I had waited until I got yellow Pikmin, I wouldn't have had to deal with the anode beetles at all. Our swarming also has to be really precise, because if we are careless we can accidentally command our Pikmin to kill an enemy, leading to a reset. We can't not use it either, as it's our most valuable asset for avoiding enemies. I opted to go with the sacrifice strategy for sublevel 4, as the enemies couldn't kill that many Pikmin. I did actually try the distraction strategy for this floor, but that stopped working the second they started eating Pikmin through the walls. The beady longlegs arena does have a treasure that we can collect, and it also has a flint beetle which gives us an ultra spicy spray drop. You might think that spray duplication is impossible without being allowed to switch captains, but it's just more precise. After that cave, I finally go and get yellow Pikmin, but we can barely get any, as the only pellets in this area are these few at the Yellow Onion, and even if there were more, the fiery Bullblack's bodyguard would have made getting more virtually impossible. I am only able to get a handful of yellow Pikmin and then decide to go straight into the Glutton's kitchen. I'll be using reds as our sacrifice Pikmin for this cave, and I'll be keeping my yellows safe and sound. This cave introduces us to the bread bugs. Just like the Dweevils, they steal treasures. If they bring one to their nest, it's despawn because we can't kill them to respawn it. You'll want to be quick for the sublevels they're on to get the treasure before they despawn them, which can be a really short window. We also get introduced to the Bullbear, who is basically the final boss of this challenge. He roams the entire map, follows you, and can command dwarf bullbears to follow him as well. He is an absolute headache whenever he shows up. He doesn't actually die when you kill him and can come back to life, so I could make an exception for him, but I consider that cheating and would defeat the point of the challenge. The dwarf bullbears are also a double-edged sword compared to other dwarf bullboard variants. They can follow Pikmin infinitely as well, which can make them easier to distract and lead away from things, but comes with the drawback that they can target Pikmin carrying things and completely ravage them. This happened here, and to make things worse, a bread bug decided to latch onto the treasure, and if it sunk below 11 Pikmin, he would drag it back to his nest. which meant having to awkwardly swarm Pikmin onto the treasure to replace dead ones in this really weird game of tug of war. As if that floor wasn't bad enough, we have to deal with cannonballs immediately after. Distracting them with a single Pikmin they can't hit and that isn't in the way of your carrying route is the best way to deal with them. The only enemy deaths I'm allowing here are enemies accidentally killing other enemies, because we did nothing to kill them ourselves and it's sometimes pretty unavoidable. I'm only allowing this if it's accidental. I won't be purposely leading things into boulders and bombs to cheese the whole challenge. One dwarf bullbear getting munted by an offhand boulder isn't going to change much anyways. The final floor is basically the only boss floor where we have to do some interacting with the boss. We have to get all the treasures before the giant breadbug and his disciples take them. It went miraculously well here. I can never pull this off normally, but I thankfully got it for the challenge run first try. I didn't feel like doing anything else in the perplexing pool, so it's time to get blue Pikmin. I got a few more yellows and reds in the Valley of Repose beforehand, and then I ventured into the Awakening Wood, featuring the world's most annoying cloaking burrow net. This guy thought the electric fence was an all-you-can-eat buffet. Olimar had to push him off the timeout ledge so he could safely break it down. Just like yellow Pikmin, there are barely any pellets to cultivate blue Pikmin, but I have a trick up my sleeve this time. We just gotta get this treasure first. Mario Paints, oh yeah, that's a reference to Fortnite. I go into the Hole of Beasts and exit immediately. Now all the pellet posies have respawned and the blue onion is right by our base, which lets us easily get a few more. Then it's time to head to the Bulblax Kingdom, but beforehand I cultivated a single bitter spray. This is a very helpful power up for this challenge as it turns enemies to stone and freezes them for a short while. I barely farmed it for this challenge as I didn't want to completely cheese it and I also was too lazy to do that. Anyways, I reached the cave by the skin of my teeth. This cave is usually a decent challenge, but when you skip all of the enemy treasures and aren't concerned about getting a good time, it's kind of a cakewalk. Sub-level 4 is usually a nightmare, but we only have to get one treasure and I don't have to worry about losing purples to electricity or the Wally Hop because I didn't use any. The Emperor Bulblax Arena has an additional treasure we have to get by solving a puzzle. The Bulblax himself was in the way, so I used my newly found bitter spray to shut him up. The Pikmin made sure to give him a rude shove as well. After that, the day is over and I decide to go back to the Valley of Repose as I'd be able to cultivate more blue Pikmin from the pellets, compared to the perplexing pool which has none. Our first day back here is spent unlocking the latter bits of the area and collecting some overworld treasure. I thought it was smart cheesing the Snagger treasure and then remembered the white Pikmin just drown themselves if you don't drain the lake first. Whoops. I was able to stop them from killing themselves, but 2 died by getting eaten. It did not kill the Snagret, so it's only mildly disappointing instead of being a forced reset. Purples also get a bit of usage to cheese another treasure that usually needs yellow Pikmin. There's a lot of extra time spent grinding pellets and avoiding enemies, so this day took longer than usual and we had to go to the next day to reach any caves. I'm not looking forward to the late game caves as they are pretty difficult normally, and they especially will be now that we cannot kill any enemies. There's a watery blowhog in front of this gate, but he deals 0 damage to Olimar, so he was pointless. What a shitty and useless enemy. The Subterranean Complex. This cave was not fun. It's already cramped when you can't kill the enemies, so it's even worse when everyone is still alive and having a jamboree. The tougher and more frequent the enemies get, the more taxing the sacrifice strategy becomes, and keep in mind that we have a pretty short supply of Pikmin. We also have a sub-level with the Swooping Snitchbug and Careening Dirigibug together, which is like putting a cyberbully and a hardened terrorist together. And wait a second, it's a reference to both these guys having Smash Bros trophies in Fortnite. Bombs aren't the worst hazard, but they can cause some destruction if you're careless and can force you to move out of the area, so having an enemy dropping them constantly can be quite troublesome, especially because we can't permanently stop him from doing it. Bombs are kind of an overhyped hazard though, especially by critics of this game. I mean, I don't mean to toot my own Fortnite, but I never had an issue dodging them. We also get boulders here from the Armored Cannon Beetle. I've also never had issues dodging these. I think my newly born father was playing in that clip. If you do the usual distracting them with a single Pikmin they can't hit, you should be fine. Just look out for the fire geysers. Sub-level 4 is a rest floor, and for sub-level 5 you don't need to fight anything. Volatile Dweevils dispose of themselves, which we can't do anything about, and also heroes never die, so it doesn't matter anyways. Sub-level 6 is already like the most dense floor in the cave, and it's an absolute nightmare here. It's like a never-ending game of chess that you can't win. You have to stop a Dweevil, a Dirigibug, and Anode Dweevils to get a treasure, and they will all just interfere with each other constantly, so you'll just be stuck in a loop of making zero progress. We are not allowed to blow anyone up on purpose either, as discussed earlier. The best solution is to just use a bitter spray if you get in this situation and just run off with the goods. This challenge is also the only time having an escape geyser right before the boss is actually helpful. After wrapping up that difficult cave, it's straight into the Frontier Cavern. Distraction tactics have gone really hard to pull off because there's just a constant stream of enemies. I have to distract this guy while dodging boulders. I also have to bring my Pikmin with me because I can't have Louis safeguard them away from the enemies. And I also cannot use Louis to distract 2 enemies at once. I decided to skip a treasure here because it would have been annoying to get, a completely meaningless decision that will have absolutely 0 consequences later. Oh great, a maze with a Bulbear and a Bulbmin, which is basically just teasing us because we can't have any of the Bulbmin. It's basically like dealing with 2 Bulbears at once. Thankfully I was able to get every single treasure on this floor, and I did not forget one on this floor, and I will not have to go back on this floor. And another challenge is just holding back on muscle memory and Dandori instincts. Every time I see a crowd of enemies, I want to go absolutely apeshit and kill everything, because it would be fun, and you're supposed to do that in both Pikmin and real life, but I can't. It's against the rules. I'm starting to get real sick of all these cannonballs we have to be dealing with. Oh, they killed the Bulbman later. Don't mind if I do. Surprisingly, the game wasn't designed with you doing this in mind, so it's really difficult. The water dumpers and fire geysers make dodging boulders in this small floor 10 times worse. I did get the Bulbman again, however. I know that seems sketchy, but the enemy does follow you, so it's not my fault it willingly walked in someone else's line of fire while I was doing something else. Then we have to deal with the Orange Order, whose whole gimmick is they wake up easily, so it's nearly impossible to sneak by them, and they're everywhere and the floor is massive. They ate so many Pikmin I had to go back and get extras to continue carrying the treasure. Anyways, after that we finally get to leave both this cave and the Valley of Repose. I wanted to go to the Awakening Wood and do the Snaggered Hole, but that turned out to be really difficult. Sheargrubs have spawned in and they break down all the bridges immediately, and then there's 2 Sheargrubs and 2 Wollyhops on this small isolated island. You have to bring white Pikmin to break the bridge down, and you have to use swarming to avoid the water, but you better not swarm 1 inch too far to the left and actually kill a fragile Sheargrub. These Sheargrubs only spawn in on later days, which is still another consequence of not killing that red dwarf Bulborb. I eventually decide to try again later and go to the perplexing pool. Into the shower room. Our tactics have remained the same throughout the caves, but we do have to deal with an annoying, withering blowhog. The only challenge here is preventing myself from having the last laugh. Then we get to sub-level 6 where a volatile Dweevil blew up a dwarf orange Bulborb. That's not nice. We also then have to take the long walk of shame, just watching our treasure get stolen, our Pikmin get devoured. It's a hard sight to watch. However, a secret miracle happened here as Olimar died, and I finally got to be Louie for once. Nice. This wasn't just a once-off thing, as when I got back to the overworld, the game played the cutscene that unlocks the captain swap mechanic, meaning I could finally utilize one of my captains to their fullest potential. It also gave me a free red Pikmin as well. Thanks. After that I go back to the Awakening Wood, and it's Louie's first real day on the job, and he's fucking dead. At least he helped us deal with this abhorrent section. I also used hashtag Dandori and brought the air brake to the very edge here so I could keep the Pikmin carrying it into the cave, and then I just easily grab it when I go back to the base. The Snaggered Hole wasn't really that interesting because we had to skip a lot of the floors. The most interesting one was sub-level 2 because all of the Pikmin wanted to die. They'd bring the treasure through the creeping chrysanthemum, and then the white Pikmin thought they could solo the bulkiest enemy in the game. Other than that, however, it was pretty simple. Now I was starting to get a bit worried because we only had 1 cave left to explore and we weren't really all that close to completing the debt. Would this even be possible at all? Had I forgotten any treasures earlier? I went back to the perplexing pool and got most of the overworld treasures. This is also the last time we see yellow Pikmin as well. After that I grinded up more blues to prepare for the submerged castle. I also got a crown and telephone ring I forgot to collect earlier. Anyways, I didn't think I'd actually have to go to the submerged castle, but I'm really not looking forward to it. At least sub-level 1 started off nice. It felt good to just distract a Bulborb completely normally without 50 other things joining up to gobble up my Pikmin. Sub-level 2 was also pretty good. The Bulbman was contained behind a fence and the Dweevils didn't even try to steal anything this time. Then the Bulbman got stuck on a pipe and I just collected my chocolate donut. Sub-level 3 had an annoying withering blowhog again, but it was fine. The real trouble was sub-level 4. The withering blowhog made all of our Pikmin slow and horrible. I'm still good at dodging bombs no matter the situation, not with controller drift though, which is what was happening in that clip. We also get to use Bulbman again. I'm not cheating, they follow me into danger, I can't stop them from doing that. Because we can't collect all of the treasure, the floors are generally shorter somewhat, so the water rate didn't show up at all. Me being good at the game might have helped as well. We head back to the overworld to get the last overworld treasure, and I can say with confidence that we're like 300 Pokos short. Well, it turns out missing out on treasure earlier was not a good idea. I also straight up forgot some existed, so it's back to the Frontier Cavern. This is why the treasure gauge would have been nice. And of course the final 3 treasures are all vile and horrible to collect. There is a buried treasure where you have to try coax a dwarf bulborb away from the white Pikmin because if he eats just one of them he dies. Then we have to go back and get that Christmas present, which it turns out the one I intentionally avoided was not even that bad. And then it's back to that fucking maze to get a ring. Finally, after putting up with the Bulbear shenanigans, I can say with confidence that we are 65 Pokos short. You have got to be kidding me. I checked the treasure hoard and it turns out I missed 2 in the shower room. Final backtrack to get a broken top of a can, and finally I can say with confidence this is just getting old at this point. I'm pretty sure this is the last treasure in the game we can access without breaking the rules, and we're finally done. I don't care if anyone dies while getting eaten, just show me that 10,000 and I'm out of here. So yes, you can get to the credits and beat Pikmin 2 without killing a single enemy. This was a pretty interesting challenge and it's almost recommendable. It's fun and unique at the start, but it kinda got tiring after a while, but it was nice to find out that it's possible. We had to utilize some pretty unique strategies for this one as well. Anyways, the moral of the story is that caring about the environment is actively inconvenient, and you should hunt animals for sport and litter on sidewalks. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe for high quality Pikmin videos weekly, and be sure to comment any other challenge ideas you have. I know it's not possible for them, but we can still replicate the playstyle by not killing any unnecessary enemies. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video.